neutralize before Messiah.
In 1967, the FBI issued a classified memo with one goal, and I'm going to read it to you exactly as it was written.
These were the targets.
Not foreign agents, not enemy spies, American citizens, a mix of
Welcome to this explainer. We are diving straight into some absolutely wild, fully documented primary source evidence to uncover COINTELPRO. This was a classified 15-year intelligence program that didn't target foreign spies. Nope. It targeted everyday American citizens. We're going to stick strictly to the declassified files, the raw data, and the government's own investigations to see exactly what went down. We're kicking things off with this chilling 1967 directive, which drops us right into the reality of the government's own words. The phrasing here, it's incredibly deliberate. It explicitly outlines the goal to expose, disrupt, misdirect, discredit, or otherwise neutralize specific domestic groups. This wasn't some vague corporate mission statement, you know? It was a highly targeted tactical directive. Which brings us to our first part. What exactly was COINTELPRO? Well, at its core, COINTELPRO was just short for a counterintelligence program. It was run by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover and operated in total, complete secrecy from 1956 all the way to 1971. It was born right in the middle of the Cold War, initially framed around protecting the country from foreign espionage and the Communist Party.
But here is where it gets interesting. The program metastasized. It starts out focused on the Communist Party USA in '56, but if you follow the progression, you'll see that by 1964 it expands to white hate groups. By '67, it pivots toward black nationalist groups, and by '68, the New Left. The primary source documents reveal this super clear drift from hunting foreign threats straight to monitoring and disrupting domestic civil rights movements.
Let's look at a concrete example with Case Study 1, the MLK letter.
The program didn't
To
stay
really
focused
understand
on
the
communists.
ground-level tactics
It
impartially,
metastasized.
we've got to look at a heavily documented
1967,
operation
the
targeting
primary
Martin Luther King Jr. In November 1964, literally right after he won the Nobel Peace Prize, King receives this anonymous, threatening letter. It included this exact quote, essentially a blatant suicide note giving him 34 days to end his life. And terrifyingly, it was packaged with audio recordings that had been illegally obtained through wiretaps of his hotel rooms. Now, here's the crucial detail. This wasn't sent by some fringe hate group. Declassified Senate investigations later confirmed that the FBI actually authored and mailed this letter themselves. Actually, think about that for a second. The intelligence apparatus of the U.S. government drafted a suicide note for an American civil rights leader. In 1975, a Senate investigation known as the Church Committee impartially reviewed all these files. And when they looked at this specific operation, they didn't mince words. They officially labeled it a, quote, cruel tactic, explicitly designed to blackmail and neutralize a prominent public figure. Okay, let's move to Case Study 2, the Fred Hampton Raid. Moving ahead to 1969, we see how these tactics escalate from psychological pressure to extreme physical violence. Fred Hampton was just 21 years old. He was the chairman of the Illinois Black Panther Party. He was heavily involved in community organizing, setting up free breakfast programs for kids, and literally brokering unprecedented truces between rival gangs in Chicago. But, ironically, that exact ability to unify people is what caught the Bureau's eye. Declassified internal memos are just shockingly blunt about their intent. The directive was simple: do something about Hampton. This direct administrative pressure eventually culminated in a 4 a.m. tactical raid by 14 heavily armed police officers on December 4, 1969, right at Hampton's apartment. And the pure data from that night paints a drastically different picture from the initial official reports, which claimed a two-way shootout. The ballistics evidence shows that the Panthers fired exactly one shot. The police? They fired between 90 and 99 shots. It was overwhelmingly one-sided, resulting in Hampton being shot twice in the head at close range while he was in his bed. So you might be wondering, how did authorities know exactly where he was sleeping? Well, the raid was made possible by an FBI informant named William O'Neill. The records show O'Neill didn't just provide a detailed floor plan to the authorities ahead of the raid, he actually slipped a sedative into Hampton's drink at dinner that night, practically ensuring he wouldn't wake up. Which leads us to Part 4, the exposure and the aftermath. For 15 years, this entire intelligence apparatus, the MLK letter, the coordination of the Hampton raid, It was all completely invisible to the American public, until the night of March 8, 1971. While millions of Americans were glued to their TVs watching the Ali Frazier boxing match, an incredible security breach happened. Not by foreign spies, but by 8 ordinary civilians in Media, Pennsylvania. We're talking teachers, a daycare worker, a cab driver, and a grad student. They decided to literally break into their local FBI field office.
Their method was, honestly, remarkably simple. They bypassed complex espionage entirely. They just broke the locks, boxed up every single file in the building, took them home, read through them, and mailed copies to major journalists and members of Congress. They effectively forced the media to print the documented truth, dragging COINTELPRO out of the shadows and into the light.
That break-in triggered a massive wave of congressional oversight, which led to the 1975 Church Committee hearings, and they uncovered this staggering number: over 2,000. That is the number of individual covert operations the FBI conducted against American citizens under the COINTELPRO umbrella.
And the Church Committee revealed it wasn't even just the FBI. It was a massive, coordinated intelligence network operating against its own people across multiple government agencies. The CIA had illegally opened over 215,000 pieces of first-class mail. The NSA had intercepted millions of international communications. The exposure was absolute, and COINTELPRO was officially shut down.
Let's wrap up with Section 5, Secrets Still Buried Today.
Now you might think that's the end of the story, right? Well, not exactly. The legacy of this information control continues well into the present day. Modern researchers and historians submitting Freedom of Information Act requests today, in 2025, still regularly hit massive blackouts. Documents detailing operations that concluded over 50 years ago are still returned heavily redacted. The full scope is still partially obscured.
And what's even more concerning for historical transparency is that a huge chunk of the COINTELPRO files were permanently destroyed, or they were just deliberately withheld from the National Archives before Congress ever even had the chance to seize them during those 1970s hearings.
Beyond the missing paper trail, the hidden human toll of this era lingered for decades. Going back to William O'Neill, the informant who provided the floor plan for the Fred Hampton raid. In 1989, O'Neill finally spoke publicly about his involvement in a TV documentary. Tragically, the very next night, he took his own life at the age of 40. The psychological weight of these covert programs left scars that truly lasted a lifetime.
History buried twice is history lost forever. That phrase from the source material perfectly hits the nail on the head. When primary documents and government records are obscured, first by covert classification and then later by redaction and destruction, we risk losing the understanding of our own history entirely.
I want to leave you with a provocative thought to ponder. COINTELPRO only came to light because 8 ordinary people used crowbars and cardboard boxes to steal the evidence. If they hadn't done that, what other historical truths remain hidden right now, simply waiting for someone to open the right box? Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and keep asking the big questions.